Like this morning, if you'd stand when you find your place, Genesis chapter 13. Genesis 13. I'm going to start reading in verse 1, and I believe we're going to read all the way through verse 13 for right now. Genesis chapter 13, verse 1. And Abram went up to Egypt, he and his wife, and all that he had, and Lot with him into the south. And Abram was very rich in cattle, in silver, and in gold, and he went on his journey from the south even to Bethel, unto the place where his tent had been at the beginning, between Bethel and Hai, unto the place of the altar, which he had made there at the first. And there Abram called on the name of the Lord. And Lot also, which went with Abram, had flocks and herds and tents, and the land was not able to bear them, that they might dwell together, for their substance was great, so that they could not dwell together. And there was strife between the herdmen of Abram's cattle and the herdmen of Lot's cattle, and the Canaanite and the Perizzite dwelled then in the land. And Abram said unto Lot, Let there be no strife, I pray thee, between me and thee, and between my herdmen and thy herdmen, for we be brethren. Is not the whole land before thee? Separate thyself, I pray thee, from me. If thou wilt take the left hand, then I will take the right. Or if thou wilt depart to the right hand, then I will go to the left. And Lot lifted up his eyes and beheld all the plain of Jordan, that it was well watered everywhere, before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, even as the garden of the Lord, like the land of Egypt, as thou comest unto Zoar. Then Lot chose him all the plain of Jordan, and Lot journeyed east, and they separated themselves the one from the other. And Abram dwelled in the land of Canaan, and Lot dwelled in the cities of the plain, and pitched his tent toward Sodom. But the men of Sodom were wicked and sinners before the Lord exceedingly. Let's go ahead and stop there for now, and let's have a word of prayer. Lord, I again thank you for this time we can take in your word, Lord. I think so often we take for granted the privilege, the opportunity that we have to meet together and open your word and hear from you. I pray, Lord, that you help this evening to be exactly that, Lord. Help this not to be my thoughts, my opinions, Lord. Help this to be what you know that we need. Pray, Lord, that you'll use this time. We pray this in your name. Amen. You can go ahead and be seated. Wade, I know I forgot to turn this on at the beginning. Did I get it on now? Okay. Halfway through the prayer, I all of a sudden remembered and tried to hit the button. All right, so I'm not going to ask for a raise of hands. Just ask this to yourself. Have you ever made a decision, only to realize that was a mistake? My guess is every person at one time or another, every one of us has done something that we've made a decision as to what we would do, and then realized, oops, that was the wrong choice. And that can be to varying degrees. Sometimes we make the wrong choice, we make poor choices in decisions, and it's small. It's relatively insignificant. I'll give a personal example. I tend to be one of those people that when I find what I like to eat at a restaurant, I don't vary from it much. We were talking about Mexican restaurants earlier. I love street tacos. If I go to a Mexican restaurant, it is pretty much a given. I'm going to order street tacos, and even beyond that, it's probably going to be chorizo street tacos because I love chorizo street tacos. But sometimes I make a mistake. I sit down in the restaurant and I open the menu. That becomes a problem because they have pictures. And I don't actually read the menu. I look at a picture, and that looks good all of a sudden. So then I decide, well, maybe I should stray from what I know I always like and try this. And it seems like a good choice. And then they set it in front of me, and immediately I think, I wish I had my street tacos. I made a mistake. It's a small thing, but sometimes we make the wrong choice, and they're small like that. Other times are much larger. A couple years back now, I was working, and I needed a hole drilled in the ceiling through the floor joist for the second story, but it was tall ceilings, and I didn't have a tall ladder, and I was being lazy, and I decided instead of going and getting the tall ladder, I'll just stand on the top of my ladder with my drill in one hand, stretching as far as I can, and drill the hole, which seemed like it was going to work. It did for the first couple, and then the last hole, it caught a knot, and I I still have a scar in my arm where the drill started to go into it. it was a mistake that didn't turn out terrible, but could have ended really bad. Mistakes have varying degrees, some small and relatively insignificant, and some big. Poor choices have often varying reasons. There are some poor choices or the wrong choice that we make that are simply a mistake, made because we were maybe misinformed. Something that, I thought I knew, so I made a choice, and then I realized I didn't really know what I thought I knew. Or maybe I had no idea, but some sort of choice had to be made, so I made it. Anyone who drives has dealt with that. You're driving along, and all of a sudden you hit a T in the road, and for some reason you didn't turn your GPS on your phone when you started driving, and you have to go either right or left, and you have no idea which is the correct one, so you just make a turn, and most of the time that ends in, oops, I should have gone the other way. Or you choose a job because it looks good, and then you get into it and realize I didn't research that enough. It's been a bunch of years back now, but I had a contractor that I had that with. He had a project. He wanted me to do the plumbing on it, and signed a contract, all of that stuff. I did the work, and then it came time for him to pay, and he refused. I later, after I've already done the work, I decided to look into him and found out he had a history of doing that. I made a decision without being informed, and it bit me. And sometimes that's what our poor choices are. They're simply mistakes because we aren't informed. Other times, I'll put it this way, they're intentional. That we know that there are potential downsides. We know that I'm going to make this decision, and there might be some consequences to it, but it's what we want to do, so we're going to do it anyways. My dad used to, growing up, told my brother, and I don't know if this was always the right thing to tell us, but he told us that sometimes the consequence is worth the crime. I'm not sure why. Thinking back on it, I can't remember what the reason my dad would have told us that, but my dad had taught us that at some point. But there's some decisions that are exactly that. Well, we know there's going to be a consequence, but it's what we want to do, so we do it anyways. Kaylee and I, on Tuesday, Kaylee and I and a couple of guys from our church, we climbed Mount St. Helens, went to the top of it. I've done it before. I did it last year, so I knew it wasn't easy. I was not uninformed. I knew climbing Mount St. Helens is really neat. The views are amazing. I also knew climbing Mount St. Helens, you come back really sore the next day. But I chose to do it anyways. I knew the consequence was sore muscles. I did it anyways. Sometimes our poor decisions, poor choices that we make are not because we didn't know any better. We knew, we just chose to do it anyways. But not only are our poor choices having varying degrees and varying reasons, I'm going to put it this way, our poor choices have varying timelines. I made comment of consequences. All our poor or wrong choices have consequences. You aren't going to get around that. When we choose to do wrong, it will cost something. But sometimes that varies. Some choices that you see are, the results are immediate. I mentioned the climb on Tuesday. The results were almost immediate. By the time I got to the car, I realized, hey, I'm tired. It wasn't really until I had sat in the car for a few hours driving home that I realized how tired I really was, but it was almost immediate. There are other times that we make that choice, and we don't see the consequence for years. Have a good friend who this kind of happened to. He had made a lot of poor choices. I'll just leave it at that regarding his work and his marriage. and it seemed like for years that it wasn't going to be an issue, that it wouldn't be a problem. And one day down the road, he realized his marriage was ruined. And a lot of times, it takes long enough that we think, well, maybe I got away with it. We get this mindset that, well, God hasn't punished me yet, so maybe he's going to let me slide. And I say all of this about poor choices to get us all on kind of the same page, because I have zero doubt, like I said at the very beginning of it, that every one of us can relate to this in one way or another, that we've all had those times we've made the wrong choice. But I want to bring our focus back to our passage, looking at Lot, who made, as we know, some really, really major poor choices, which had some huge consequences. But as we go through this, I want to focus on, I want to kind of try and look at this from a different angle than we normally would, and focus on where God was through all of it. First thing that I want us to see about Lot's choices is, number one, that he left God out of the decision. He left God out of the decision. Look at verse 10 and 11. Lot lifted up his eyes and beheld all the plain of Jordan, that it was well watered everywhere, before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, even as the garden of the Lord, like the land of Egypt, as thou comest unto Zoar. Then Lot chose him all the plain of Jordan. And Lot journeyed east, and they separated themselves the one from the other. Here Lot is on the edge of making what is going to be a life-changing decision. To this point in his life, he's grown up with Abram. When God tells Abram to go, there isn't a question whether or not Lot is going with him. These two men are incredibly close. A relationship that they have, I want to say, is like brothers, except I don't think most brothers have as good of a relationship as Abram and Lot have. I mean, to this point, it was just a given. If you had Abram, by default, you got Lot as well, and vice versa, that they were inseparable, and now that was about to change. By necessity, they were going to have to split up. So he was about to make a decision that would completely change his life by separating him from Abram. And we don't know, the Bible doesn't give us a lot of insight on Lot's relationship with God. Based on a few factors, we have to believe he had one. At least, I mean, the Bible calls him just Lot. There aren't a lot of people that you and I would say are just, let alone God saying he's just. There aren't a lot of people that's said about. And then when the Lord is destroying Sodom and Gomorrah, he includes Lot among the righteous that are in the city. Remember the I guess debate between Abram and God about, would you destroy the city if there are this many righteous? And he brings God down to 10 righteous, and God sends an angel into the city and that angel goes straight to Lot. If nothing else, being as close as he was to Abram, he would have been a witness to the relationship Abram had with God. When we started reading in Genesis 13, we see Abram going to God at the altar. I find it interesting the way that it words it, and it might be looking a little into it, but verse 4, unto the place of the altar which he had made there, and Abram there called on the name of the Lord. And then it just kind of says, and Lot also, which went with Abram. That you have Abram going to God, but not necessarily Lot. But I think we have to assume that he at least had some sort of relationship with God, and yet when faced with what is a life-changing decision, God was nowhere in the equation for Lot. I mean, that was never a consideration. We don't see Lot saying, let me pray about it. Let me build an altar here. Let me take this to God. We see very plainly, verse 11, Lot chose him all the plain of Jordan. God was nowhere in that. We don't see any of him seeking God. Lot looked at what looked best to him and made this life-changing decision completely off of self. And we look down on Lot for that. And understandably so, because he made a huge mistake. But I think before we get too fast to point the finger, we ought to look in the mirror first, because it's very often that we're guilty of the same thing. I'll give a couple of examples. I used this one this morning. A boy meets a girl, and the two fall in love. And very often, they don't put any consideration into if marrying this person is God's will or not. They only know we're in love. So they come to parents, they come to their pastor. I've have them come to myself. I have, in our church, I'm the associate pastor. I have taught our teens for, this summer will be 13 years, 14 years, somewhere in there, a long time. So often they'll come to myself, and I always find out, they'll ask my opinion on it, but honestly, they don't care. My dad was the first that I heard say this to someone, and that he just told them that. He was like, will my opinion really change what you're thinking anyways? Because they've made their decision. They just want us to say how happy we are for them. They're looking for our blessing rather than what we really think, because they've already made the decision way before taking God's opinion into account. Or about the example of a new job opportunity. Very often as a pastor, I hear people getting new jobs. It's a great new job. It just means I can't come to church. But they justify it with, it's better pay, better benefits. Of course, God would want me to have that so I can better provide for my family. But they never actually ask him. They're in essence putting words in his mouth. A move that we think just seems right. I mean, everything is better. That's what Lot faced. It's well watered. You know what that means? Lot looked and said, hey, the grass is greener over there. I mean, that's what he's doing, and we often do the same. Things look so good that it must be right. One of my guys that works for me just kind of had this scenario that he came to me one of the days we were working, and he said, so I just got offered another job. It's going to work me more hours for better pay. And, he's a friend. I told him if you feel like you need to do it, do it. So he left, and it wasn't a week later that he called me saying, I'm miserable. I hate this job. They're terrible. And about another week after that, he was back working for me again because the grass was greener, and then came back. But we often do that same thing. Things look so good, it must be right, and we leave God completely out of those decisions. I know there's a lot of areas that we could mention, and those are only a few, but we're often guilty of this same mistake that Lot made, making huge decisions in our lives and completely leaving God out of it, choosing you. God wants to be a part of our decision making, but he won't force himself in. God's not going to stand over you and tell you better pick what I want or else. He wants to be included in your decisions, but that's your decision. First of all, tonight we see God left out of the decision. Second, tonight I want to see God pushed out of the home. Look over at chapter 19, Genesis 19, verse 12 is where we're just going to read 12 through 14, a couple of verses here. The men said unto Lot, hast thou here any besides son-in-law and thy sons and thy daughters, and whatsoever thou hast in the city, bring them out of this place, for we will destroy this place, because the cry of them is waxing great before the face of the Lord. And the Lord has sent us to destroy it. And Lot went out and spake unto his sons and his sons-in-law, which married his daughters, and said, up, get you out of this place, for the Lord will destroy this city. Listen to this, but he seemed as one that mocked unto his sons-in-law. The story is familiar enough. We don't need to read it all. We know we jumped quite ahead. We know the progression that Lot took. We see Lot, he chose the plain. After he chose the plain, he moved to the place where the Bible tells us that he pitched his tent toward the city. He's looking at the city and all that it had to offer, seeing what the benefits were here. And the next thing we know, Lot is in the city, and more than just in it, he is a respected member of society, which are all steps taking God more and more and more out of his home. But to me, the verses that we just read show the extent that this has reached. Lord tells Lot, get your family together because I'm going to destroy the city, and they need to leave. And when Lot goes to his sons-in-law, they laugh. Rather than taking Lot serious, that God said this, we need to obey it, they laugh, which tells you a few things about where God was in Lot's home. It tells me that God wasn't mentioned often in their home. It tells me that when you come saying, God said we need to do this, and they laugh, that God's not mentioned often. A few years ago now, I preached a series on the children of Israel when they were directed to set up a memorial, a pile of stones. They'd go in the river. God had them go into the river and set a pile of stones. And God gave the reason for that so that they could rehearse to their children what God had done. They weren't put there so that they could go back and worship this pile of stones. The theme for that series was "Be a Pile of Rocks," because they weren't put there to be worshipped. It was put there to remind them who to worship. Doing that shows their kids the way that God rescued them. It shows their children how powerful their God is. It showed their children that God cared and is involved, but that obviously hasn't been happening in Lot's house, because these boys didn't believe God could or would do what he said he would. God wasn't mentioned in their home. It tells me that God was more of a joke than a coming Messiah. They didn't believe that he could or would do this. Seemed to them like Lot was mocking, which probably means he had before. It tells me that it wasn't personal, that this was Uncle Abram's God. When he was with Uncle Abram, Abram and God were close, but it was between them. And the longer that he spent from Abram, the further he pushed God out of his home. And I think bringing the comparison to ourselves again, it begs the obvious question, where is he in your home? Where is he in your home? We could look at the same three things with Lot. Is God mentioned in your home, or is that just a church thing? Because that's true in many, quote, Christian homes today. That they come to church and they talk about God when in church, and then go home and put their Bibles away and don't mention him again until the next day they head to church. Is he mentioned in your home, or is God a joke in your home? I know if your church is anything like mine, the automatic reaction is, well, no, of course not. But really? Because if we say, I trust God to answer prayer, but then really don't, isn't that making him a joke? If I say, I trust that God will take care of me in this, but in reality I'm figuring out my own way, isn't that making him a joke? I can't help but wonder if sometimes we say we're going to trust God, and inside our kids are laughing because they know we really aren't. They know when it really comes down to it, you won't trust God. You'll find your own ways. Is he a joke in our home? And then, is it personal? Or is it just your pastor's faith, your spouse's faith? For kids, your parents' faith. And this, is it personal? In this passage, we see God left out of the decision, God pushed out of the home. And yet, number 3, we see God in the solution. Lot has pushed him out, or has left him out of the decision, has pushed him out of the home, and yet God was still in the solution. Look at chapter 19, verse 15 through 17. Let me find my place. When the morning arose, then the angels hastened Lot, saying, Arise, take thy wife and thy 2 daughters, which are here, lest thou be consumed in the iniquity of the city. And while he lingered, the men laid hold upon his hand, upon the hand of his wife, and upon the hand of his 2 daughters, the Lord being merciful unto him, and they brought him forth and set him without the city. And it came to pass, when they had brought him forth abroad, that he said, Escape for thy life, look not behind thee, neither stay thou in all the plain, escape to the mountain, lest thou be consumed. Let's think about this for just a moment here. Lot has walked away from God. Lot is given the choice where he wants to go, and he chooses himself rather than God. He has left God out of the decision. He's pushed God out of his home, so much so that when he tells his kids God is going to do something, they think it's a joke. And yet, all of that time, when the time comes that Lot needs help getting out of the mess that his own decisions have caused, God was still there. I mean, Lot has chosen to walk away, and yet God was still there. God doesn't say, Lot, you made the mess, you have to live with it. Doesn't say, no, you pushed me out. This is your problem now. Figure it out yourself. You left me out of the decision process. You pushed me out of your home. Now you're left to figure out the solution. Leave me out of this solution because this is your mess. That's something we would do. That's something we would do. Someone excludes us from a decision, and then, it causes a problem. We want no part of figuring that out, but that's not what God does. That's not what God does. When Lot needed to be rescued from his own mess, and I cannot stress that enough, when he needed to be rescued from his own mess, God was there with a solution. And God was not only there to tell him to gather his family and leave, and not only there to tell him when it was time to leave, but when Lot continued to linger, God was there to grab him by the hand and drag him out of town. Because while Lot may have chosen a way that seemed like it was walking away from God, and while Lot may have been pushing God out of his home and out of his family, God never left Lot. God was still there, still ready to rescue. And for the Christian, the same is true. We make decisions that exclude God, don't we? If we're honest, we all do at times. We make decisions that exclude God. We may sometimes choose to walk away from God. We may sometimes even choose by the way that we live to push him out of our homes, out of our family, but that doesn't mean that God's gone anywhere. He's still right there, ready to help you out of the mess you've created. As I said earlier, that doesn't mean there'll be no consequences. It doesn't mean there isn't still a price for your decision. Lot paid a pretty heavy price. Lost his wife and the mess with his children. Lot paid a heavy price, but it does mean you don't have to face them alone. There's a consequence, but it does mean you don't have to face them alone. Going to kind of get ready to, I guess, wrap this up in the general direction of conclusion. We'll go with that. Here's the idea that I want to try and get across. Let's learn from the mistakes of Lot. That seems pretty simple, right? Learn from the mistakes that Lot made. learn to not only include God in your decisions, but make your decisions based on Him. Because there is a huge difference. There is a huge difference between I'm going to include you in the decision and I'm going to base my decision on it. There's a difference between me saying, Johnny, I want your opinion on this, and saying, Johnny, whatever you say, that's what I'm doing. There's a big difference. That's how our decisions ought to be with God. Not saying, God, what's your input on this? And I'll weigh it with my opinion and then I'll make a decision. No, saying, God, you lead. I'll do whatever you say. Learn from Lot's mistakes. Learn from Lot's mistake and keep God in your home. Not just on Sundays, but every day. Not just on Wednesdays when you come to church, but every day. I try to make it a practice in my home that I do my morning devotion, my Bible reading, my praying in our living room. Our living room is far from the most private place in our house. I get interrupted almost every single day. But I do that on purpose. I do that so that not every morning does it work this way timing-wise, but I do that so that my kids can wake up and come out and see Dad in his Bible. I know in doing it that it means I'm going to get interrupted. It means that there's going to be different things that are going to draw attention, whatever, but I do it because I want my children to see their dad reading his Bible. I want my children to see their dad in prayer because I want God in my home every day. I want my kids to grow up knowing that God isn't just a weekend thing. Isn't just a when we go to church thing. He's in our home daily. Learn from the mistakes that Lot made to avoid making them yourself. I could see someone though saying, it's too late for that. I've already made the mistakes. I've already messed up in life. Take comfort in the fact God hasn't gone anywhere. God hasn't gone anywhere, and though we've maybe made mistakes and walked away, pushed away, He's still right beside you, ready to rescue. Ready to, as He did with Lot, take you by the hand and drag you out. As we saw with David this morning, lift you up out of that pit, out of that miry clay. He's still there. Simply, I guess I'll keep it this way. Simply turn to Him. Simply know He is there. Let's go ahead and pray. Lord, I pray that you will help us to grasp this, Lord. I know this may be, oversimplified, Lord, but as we look at Lot, someone who undoubtedly had heard of you and had some sort of relationship with you, and yet when faced with this huge decision in his life, made it completely without you. And then as he continues on, he just continues to push more and more away, making a complete mess of things. And it's so easy for us to read that and think, boy, shame on Lot. But it's so easy for us to do the same. That we're in church. We know that we should be close to you. We know we should be seeking your will and be following you, and yet so often we do exactly like Lot, and we have this decision, and we never take into thought what you would want. We never take into thought where you would want us to, or what you would want us to do. And then in our homes we get to where we get complacent and God just becomes a church thing. Pushed out of our home to where often I feel or I fear our kids see God more as a joke than as a serious relationship. Lord, and yet, as we see with Lot, you are still there. That though he turned and though he pushed you away, and we often make decisions and push you away, you're still there ready to rescue. Lord, I pray that you'll help us to turn our focus, to turn our decisions back to you. Pray this in your name. Amen.